gang. Bring 'em up.
Here we go. History in the making. Green, green, green.
Let's see. Pretty flat track and the same tire they use in Phoenix. Why wouldn't a Penske driver win the race? And would NASCAR really go back to a format that doesn't feature a playoff? Hi, this is Brett McMillan. You're listening to the Pit Reporters. With me this week, Jordan Bianchi from The Athletic and Pete Pistone from SiriusXM NASCAR Radio.
Welcome to the Pit Reporters on the Performance Racing Network. And now, here's your host, Brett McMillan.
Oh, I'm looking forward to this one with Jordan and Pete. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to this next hour. Well, let's start it off with New Hampshire, Jordan. I said going in, why wouldn't it be a Penske guy on a Phoenix-type track?
Yes, exactly. And, there's a consensus going in that maybe it was going to be Toyota because they'd won the first three races. But lo and behold, when it comes down to it, Ryan Blaney is still Ryan Blaney on these tracks. Penske is still Penske. And it's not even just Ryan Blaney. It's Joey Logano, who started on the pole, led a bunch of laps. It's Josh Berry, who, yes, he's in a Wood Brothers car, but is Penske finishing second. They looked really good this weekend, and it's really hard to carry over and extrapolate, hey, they were good at New Hampshire, they're going to be at Kansas. That doesn't work that way. But looking ahead, you look ahead to Martinsville, which is the cutoff race in that last round, and then Phoenix, that championship. I'm telling you right now, if the garage hasn't declared Penske the favorite yet to win the championship, they probably should, because if Ryan Blaney gets to Phoenix or Joey Logano gets to Phoenix, they're probably going to win the championship.
I can already hear the vitriol from the other teams, Pete. Well, it's those yellow cars again.
Here come the yellow cars this time of the year. You're 100% right. But I'll be honest with you guys. I am not embarrassed to admit I thought, to what Jordan said, it was going to be going into the weekend a Toyota weekend. I really did. Christopher Bell was up there, part of the test that they had, the tire test. He'd been so good up there. And when you look at the track record that JGR has had at that racetrack over the years, I kind of thought it would lean toward Toyota. But the minute we had practice and Joey Logano wound up winning the pole, you kind of sense that pendulum swinging over to Team Penske and to Ford. So certainly firing the first salvo across the bow was Ryan Blaney to show everybody that, yes, this is the most important time of the year. And as I've been saying all along when we've had this playoff format, guys, it doesn't matter what you do. It's when you do it. And when you do it right now during the playoffs is the most important time to do it.
And I think you look at Ryan Blaney and the year he's having, he's had a bunch of DNFs, but he's also got more top fives than anybody else in the circuit.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't the narrative on Blaney in this format in general. Oh, so-and-so's just getting hot and they're going to win the championship. They didn't do anything. Forget that. Blaney is like second or third most wins this year. Leads the series in top fives, is tied, I think, with top 10 finishes. His average finishes is high up there. He finished second in the regular season points. This is a driver and team who have been good, borderline great, most of this year. They've had a lot of things go wrong, like engine failures. They should have 2, 3, 4 additional wins, and they haven't been able to do that for various reasons. This is a great driver, a great team who is built for this playoff, and they are just showcasing what they've already showcased this year. This isn't a team getting hot at all.
And I think, Pete, we're finally seeing what we expected Ryan Blaney could be, and once he won the championship, it was kind of like that, the proverbial monkey was off his back, and we expected that the championships could start to come, not in bunches, obviously, but the wins would start to come in bunches, and we're beginning to see that, turn into reality.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, obviously the guy won the championship a couple years ago, but I mean, I would add to what Jordan said. Yeah, the 7 DNFs, but even the races where he's got all these top fives, there's been about 4 or 5 times I can remember where he had to come back from adversity in those races and race his way back. I mean, a few weeks ago at Gateway when Kyle Larson got into him being one of the examples. So definitely they're hitting on all 8 cylinders, no pun intended. And I also like the combo platter, guys, between he and Jonathan Hassler. I think that's a really good tandem for those two. I think their personalities very much complement one another. Mm-hmm. And right now, there's just really not right. I don't find a racetrack the rest of the way where I'd say, I'm not so sure Ryan Blaney's got a chance to win there. That's how good I think this team is right now.
Yeah, and I think Pete makes a great point about Ryan and Jonathan Hassler. Ryan can get really fiery in the race car sometimes and get animated a little bit. And Jonathan just, I mean, you almost you want to check for a pulse, right? And I say that jokingly because he's just so quiet and calm. Like, okay, Ryan, okay. And they just work really, really well together. And Jonathan isn't a loud guy. He's a real quiet, unassuming guy, but he just goes about his business, and he does a really good job of putting his driver in position. And New Hampshire unfolded that way. At one point in that race, Hassler said, "We're going to take 4 tires." Most everyone else took 2. It's like, okay. In the long run, though, this is going to work out for us, and here's why. And it did. Next stop, they took 2 tires to stop. After that, they were able to take 4 tires, and it's like they just kind of piggyback that, and it's about putting your driver in a really good position, and they just are this team right now that is clicking. They're as good a combination as any in the garage.
You know, a lot of people felt like New Hampshire was a big race in this round, Pete, because of the fact that, you know, Kansas is the 1.5 miles. That tends to be where we've seen strength from the Hendrick cars this year, but we haven't had a 1.5 miles since Charlotte. And then you go back to the Roval, and there's always something unexpected coming out of the Roval, it seems like. Logano is, I think, an underappreciated road course racer, but he started this race on the wrong side of the cut line, ends up finishing 4th, led a bunch of laps, as you talked about. He's now 24 points to the good. This was a big race for him, in addition to the fact he said he loves going up there because it's the one place he doesn't get booed.
Yeah, well, there's that, right? And when he won the pole, I mean, a lot of people were giving him a little bit of grief because he was celebrating. Like, hey, dude, it was just the pole. Listen, that's his home track, you know, and he wants to do well when he goes up there. We know that the lineage of Joey in that area of the country and all of his friends and family there, I believe he's got 3 top 5 finishes in a row now. And, you know, again, this is the time of the year where he also finds that next gear, he and Paul Wolfe. So I think they are very well positioned. They usually run well at Kansas. And again, I agree with you, Brett. I mean, the Roval, everybody can talk about it being a hybrid, and it is, but it's a road course. And if you're a good road course racer, you're going to excel there. And I think Logano's underrated in that department as well.
You know, I got to mention how well Josh Berry ran, and it would have been interesting to see if he could have. I know he had older tires, I mean, 12-lap older tires at the end of the race. Poor guy had finished last the first 3 races of the playoffs, and it was nice to see them bounce back and really have a good run. And it would have been interesting to see if he'd been on equal tires if he could have given Blaney a run for it at the end.
Yeah, I mean, he had about as worse a opening round of the playoff, I think, in the history of this playoff, which is saying something. Just one stomach punch after another. It was nice to see them have a good run. Josh Berry's a really good driver. This team has had really good runs this year. They just have not had a lot of luck. They've not had the corresponding finishes. And it looked like New Hampshire's going to be that again, right? They're fast, they're running well, and then you get spun out, and you're like, here we go again. And then they luckily they were able to rally back and they turn in a nice performance. It's just, that's how you build a team. And this is their first playoff outing. Didn't go well, but you learn from this, and you would think that going forward they're going to be better for it. And you look at how this playoff lays out. There's some really good tracks coming up. Josh Berry won at Vegas earlier this year. We go back to Vegas. He's good at Martinsville. Phoenix should be good for him. This team has got a really good opportunity to get another win, if not a win, some more top 5s, some top 10s to really kind of build on this and then set themselves up for a big 2026.
The other guy that kind of slipped into the top 5 was William Byron. Had a good run. I think it was his best run I think he ever had at New Hampshire. Finished 3rd place. You know, and we've been looking at Hendrick during this first round of the playoffs, kind of going, where have they been, Pete? And for him, I would think this had to be a real confidence booster or just a boost for that team in general.
Yeah, totally. When you think about Hendrick as a whole, to your point, Brett, they had a miserable first round of the playoffs. And here's the guy that won the regular season championship, and William Byron. And we talked to his crew chief, Rudy Fugel, on the morning drive every Monday. And Rudy shows up, you know, rain or shine, and there's been a little more rain the last few weeks. Very happy with the way they ran over the weekend. He said when they got off the hauler, which has been a problem, they had speed. They were fast in practice. They qualified well, and William came home 3rd. At a racetrack, when you think about it, you look back, Hendrick hadn't won at New Hampshire since like Casey Kane was driving for the team. That's how long it's been since you saw a Hendrick Motorsports car roll into victory lane in Loudon. So that was a really good run for him. Chase Elliott did a nice job for Hendrick Motorsports as well. If they could ever figure out how to qualify outside of the top 20, inside the top 20, they'd be a lot better off, 27th. But I thought for Hendrick, even though they didn't win the race, Kyle Larson showed some speed as well. I thought it was a pretty good day for Hendrick Motorsports up there in New England on Sunday.
And they needed it, too. I mean, it hasn't been a horrible start to the playoff. Obviously, Bowman's exclusion on that side there. But you just needed to see some signs of life there. And Kyle Larson's last few weeks have kind of been there a little bit. He seems to be better. This was a good run for him, getting some laps led. He had a fast race car. Byron, obviously. Chase Elliott absolutely needs to qualify better, Pete. I agree with you that they're just continuing to cost themselves points in that first stage, which are very costly. Now we go to Kansas, which has been a Hendrick track. You know, Kyle Larson kicked everybody's butt here earlier this year. Chase Elliott was super fast. they need a good run. And I dare say they need a win, but they need some kind of like statement to remind people. Much like Penske had a statement win and race this past weekend organizationally, that's what we need to see out of Hendrick. We need to see them go to Kansas, have a bunch of speed, qualify well, lead a bunch of laps. And honestly, if they can get a win, that would be a big thing. Because right now, it feels like you got the JGR guys, you got Blaney, let's throw Logano in there, and then now we're just kind of waiting for the Hendrick guys to show up, and we'll see if they can do it this weekend.
Maybe the Hendrick guys just have a seafood allergy. None of them can eat lobster. Maybe that's the problem.
Right. Shellfish, they can't eat it. You're right. Good call, right?
Maybe that's it. When we come back, there was another big storyline that came out of New Hampshire, and it all centers around the Gibbs camp. Stay with us.
This is Kyle Petty for Echo Park Automotive. As you might imagine, I know a thing or two about cars, and I'm here to tell you about a whole new way to buy a car, truck, or SUV. Did you know that Echo Park Automotive has over 95,000 five-star reviews? On top of that, every car that Echo Park Automotive sells goes through a 190-point inspection to make sure that it looks and drives like new, so you leave happy. It's even in their name, Echo Park Automotive. Every car, happy owner. The official used car dealer of Speedway Motorsports.
When it comes to maintaining your engine to run at peak performance, trust Z-Max Micro Lubricant. Z-Max soaks into metal, so it's easy to add to your oil or gas to disperse carbon buildup in your engine, fuel system, and transmission. Protect your vehicle's engine to the max with Z-Max. Check us out at zmax.com or visit us on Facebook and Twitter to find out more about our full line of products. Remember the name Z-Max for your car, big rig, small engines, firearms, and more. That's Z-Max Micro Lubricant.
Lenny Baticki brings you PRN at the track every week here on PRN, the Performance Racing Network.
Hi, this is Doug Rice at PRN. Join me every Monday night for another great episode of Fast Talk.
I watched the race on TV, and they wanted to give him the mantle of greatest of all time, and he's won 4 races in a row. And so I can't do that yet. But I do think what we're watching is a guy who's changing the sport. He's changing the way the other drivers approach road racing. He's making them study. He's making them up their game.
That's Fast Talk right here on the Performance Racing Network.
Local radio brings people together like never before.
It's a beautiful hometown weekend out there. We've got
Your local stations keep you informed and involved with music, talk shows, and real-time news updates you can trust. We are live and local. We are America's broadcasters, connecting you to what matters most. Text radio to 52886 and tell Congress to support your local radio stations.
Message and data rates may apply. You may receive up to 4 messages a month, and you may text STOP to STOP.
This message furnished by the National Association of Broadcasters.
We're back with more of the Pit Reporters on the Performance Racing Network.
Hey, welcome back, along with Pete Pistone from SiriusXM NASCAR Radio and Jordan Bianchi from The Athletic. I'm Brett McMillan. Glad to have you with us. All right, there was a little tete-a-tete between Ty Gibbs and Denny Hamlin during the race at New Hampshire. I'm sure you heard about it. There's a difference in opinions on whether or not Ty Gibbs should have not raced Hamlin so hard, I guess that's the best way to put it, or whether or not Hamlin should have put a bumper to him that early. Pete, how do you come down on this one?
Well, I was a little torn at first because you just said right behind a driver saying I did what I had to do and they knock him out on the last lap and go and get the win. The other thing that drives me nuts is when drivers say he's racing me too hard, right? I mean, that does just drive me nuts. And Denny Hamlin said that. But I think in the bigger picture, guys, when you have to pull back to the 50,000-foot view, I get where Denny Hamlin's coming from. He tried to get around him a few times and just could not do it. And the bottom line is 2 things for me. One, that's his teammate who's not in the playoffs and doesn't have a chance to win a championship. Denny Hamlin does. And secondly, we're talking about lap 100. You know, we're not talking about 10 laps to go where Denny Hamlin and Ty Gibbs were battling for maybe a possibility of winning the race. I think that makes that a different dynamic as well. So I know that it's split, and a lot of our listeners on SiriusXM were more on Denny Hamlin's side than Ty Gibbs' side, which I found a little bit interesting considering Denny Hamlin being sort of the villain right now. But I think Denny had a legitimate beef, and in my opinion, Ty Dillon should have gotten out of the way. Now, if Denny would have been able just to nudge him out of the way and get by him, I think we're not even talking about this. But the fact that he put him into the wall and then he spun and crashed out of the race, I think that added to a lot of the drama and a lot of the controversy we've had pretty much all this week.
Jordan, how about you?
you can't go crashing your teammate. And I will give Denny Hamlin the benefit of the doubt saying that he didn't intentionally mean to do that. I think he meant to do some contact and kind of move him out of the way. He did not mean to crash him. That said, you're not in the playoffs. You're the fourth driver out of 4 at Joe Gibbs Racing right now because your 3 teammates are in the playoffs. It is up to you to do anything you can to help them win a championship, especially when your family owns the race team. I feel like that even puts more on this. And there is no upside at all for Ty Gibbs to fight over a position 11th, 12th, wherever they were running there for 1 point, for one position or potentially one stage point that early in a stage. If you've got a fast race car, let Hamlin go by and get him back later. Like it's part of situational awareness, which is sometimes escaped Ty Gibbs a little bit, and young drivers in general, right? Like you don't need in that moment need to fight that hard. Why are you fighting that hard? Live to fight another day. Let Hamlin go, let him move on, and then you can continue to go forward. If this had been late in the race and you're fighting for your first ever win, it's a different story. That's a conversation to be had. But this wasn't it. This was early in stage 2. You didn't need to do it there. It was just unnecessary. And I will say this, all involved are lucky that this didn't become a thing where the 54 crashed and took out the 11 or the 20. It just didn't need to happen. This was a situation that could have been nipped in the bud far earlier in advance, and the onus falls on the driver not in the playoffs to give way to the drivers in the playoffs. That is just how it goes.
All right, now Denny said on his podcast this week that basically he thinks leadership needs to get involved. Now, leadership getting involved, Pete, to me says you need management to have team orders. Now, we've seen team orders in NASCAR before in the playoffs, and that didn't necessarily go over so well. Am I misinterpreting this?
Well, I do think there's a difference when you just completely pull over, and let the guy go by, to also kind of understand what Jordan just said. The situational awareness is I've raced as hard as I could. It's lap 100, discretion being the better part of valor. Let me just give up here right now, and we'll come back a little bit later. It's funny because dating myself, but there was a time back when in a different point system where you got a point for leading a lap. And I remember very well teammates just waving their guy around them, their teammate, and say, here, take the lead, get the lap, and then get the point, and I'll come back and I'll get you later. So teammates working on the racetrack is nothing new in this sport. And I just think bigger picture, you need to be able to understand that. Now, what I find also interesting is Denny said what he said, Brett, but Joe Gibbs said the opposite. The drivers need to figure this out. And he's always said that. This is a driver issue, not a management issue. So where this all kind of goes from here is interesting. I'm sure that team meeting on Monday was also pretty interesting as well. And we'll see if there's a hangover effect going forward with a guy that still has a chance to win the championship with 2 others and a guy in Ty Gibbs who does not.
How far can he go with team orders or without this becoming manipulated in a result?
There's a difference between, as Pete said, pulling over and letting a guy go and winning a race. This is a position early in a race. I go back to think back like Mark Martin and Jeff Burton. What did they say all the time about their etiquette back in the day? If a guy was faster than me, I would let him go, and then I'd fall in line, and I'd end up working them over later and get that spot back if I had a faster car. That's pretty much what Denny Hamlin is saying here. Is like, I'm faster than you. Well, give me a little bit of a break here. And if you're faster than me, then come catch me and then we can sort this out. It's not team orders. It's not like, hey, I need to finish 5th. I'm going to move over and, my teammates are going to move over for me. Like there's just a little bit more to this than that. It's a little bit, to me, it's a little bit more nuance. This isn't team orders. This is just being smart. This is looking at the big picture saying, I don't need to race people as hard as I am at this point in the race. There is no upside and there's only downside, and it potentially could be hazardous for the organization as a whole that I drive for and my family owns.
This is the hazard when you have multi-car teams, right, Pete?
Sure. Yeah, for sure. But there's another part of this I want to throw in there, and I'm not trying to pile on, but on the Ty Gibbs side of things. We all remember when Ty Gibbs was in the Xfinity Series and even the ARCA Series, he had kind of a habit of knocking people out of the way when he felt he was faster than they were, but they weren't giving him an opportunity, including a teammate in Brandon Jones at Martinsville. If you remember that a few years ago.
Yep.
So, you know what I mean? Sometimes you got to kind of think about where you are right now versus kind of the way you handled yourself. And that's why I don't know if a lot of people are giving Ty Gibbs the benefit of the doubt, simply because, well, his body of work has got some of those things I just brought up.
The body of work for Ty Gibbs says he can be It's a little bit more selfish, and he doesn't have the perspective of the 30,000-foot view of what is better for the organization. Going back to Martinsville, that's a situation where if you let Ty Gibbs is running second, already locked into the championship four. Brandon Jones is leading. If Brandon Jones wins that race, he's going to be locked in the championship four, giving two Gibbs drivers. There's no need to slam into your teammate and knock him out of the lead and then crash him. Like, that doesn't. There's no upside to that. What are we doing here? And it's that kind of thing. Now, Ty has done a really good job since coming into the Cup Series of kind of putting that in the past. He's been relatively clean, right? Mm-hmm. For the most part. But these kind of incidents, they'll flare up, and it's really easy to go back and say, this is not just an isolated thing. This is kind of a pattern now, and it's a little frustrating when your teammate is doing this because his grandfather owns the team, and it's hard not to think how this would have been handled if it was a different driver. If this was a different driver, would they have been on the radio saying, listen, got to move over, big picture here, let that 11 go, that kind of thing. But because it's Ty Gibbs, because his grandfather owns the race team, does he get a little bit longer of a runway in how he races in terms of etiquette? That can be frustrating, and we heard that from Denny Hamlin on the radio of like, where's the direction here? Where's the leadership here? The team is saying, hey, we're going to let the driver sort it out. Well, here's a driver saying, we can't sort it out. We need leadership to step in here and lay down the gauntlet of how this is going to be, because obviously drivers sorting it out hasn't worked.
All right. Each week on the Pit Reporters, we give you a chance to go to GoPRN.com and vote in our poll. And this week's question is, how do you see the Gibbs-Hamlin spat? And your choices are: championship contenders should get priority, Gibbs has a right to race for the win, we don't want team orders, or it was too early to get into it. So those are your choices. When we come back, what will the playoff format look like next year? Have we got any idea? Oh, we got some. Stay with us.
Attention investors. This is a simple commercial on the investment value of gold. Gold continues to make new highs. In good markets and in bad markets, you need to have your portfolio balanced with gold. Learn about owning physical gold or getting a gold-backed IRA. Make this simple call right now.
800-308-4648. 800-308-4648. That's 800-308-4648.
Sponsored by Reagan Gold. We're offering a 100% risk-free gold guide. Gold continues to make new highs. And unlike stocks, gold has never been worth zero. You owe it to your nest egg and future to own some physical gold or set up a gold-backed IRA. Call right now for your free report.
800-308-4648. 800-308-4648. That's 800-308-4648.
Sponsored by Reagan Gold.
Mark Garrow's your host for Garage Pass, here on PRN, the Performance Racing Network.
No one's paying me to say this, but you've been our lifeline. We have no internet. We have no TV. We barely have cell service. I don't know how I'm able to get to you. My Wi-Fi is not working. And I have a radio, and I finally got power on, and I have it plugged in, and I could hear you. You're the only station I can get in.
Wow. Well,
That's
I'm
why
glad
we're here.
So,
wow.
The report that we got was that a severe tornado was heading right toward us. But I just want to commend you gentlemen for the job that you're doing, for keeping us informed.
I just wanted to say thank you for being on the radio and guiding us to, where we can get help.
I just want to tell you, the first thing I heard was your voices the next morning. Oh, shoot. And it made me cry. The comfort of hearing your voices.
My respiration, perspiration, and aggravation are sky high, but you guys have been the guiding light.
Your local AM station makes a difference. Brett McMillan returns with more of the Pit Reporters here on the Performance Racing Network.
Hey, Sweepstakes fans, start your entries. Visit echopark.com/speedway to enter for a chance to win a Toyota Tundra plus a brand new Thor camper. Visit echopark.com/speedway now, and you can drive off a winner. And welcome back. Jordan Bianchi is here from The Athletic, and Pete Pistone from SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. I'm Brett McMillan. Glad to have you with us. Your teammate, Jeff Gluck was writing this week about that he was talking to some folks, Jordan, who were involved in the playoff committee meeting last week, and they're expected to be the last playoff committee meeting. Jeff says he's kind of getting on board with this new idea for next year of going back to the old system where we determine a champion by just looking at the whole season, 1 to 36, and determine it that way. I don't like that personally. I don't know how close that is to reality, but it seems like there are a lot of different options on the table, including continuing a playoff format. But do you feel like the one race championship is going to go away after this year? Is that kind of the prevailing opinion that you have?
I feel very, very confident in saying that the one race championship finale that we've had, that's been in place since 2014 is going to be no longer. There will be a change, I'm very confident saying, to the playoff format for next year. Now, what shape that takes, we'll see. Yes, there has been a lot of conversation about maybe a season-long championship. I just don't see that the momentum is there enough to push that to the finish line. It still seems like that there is probably the direction that NASCAR's heading is into a multi-race championship format or championship finale. And the format I keep hearing a lot about is the 3-3-4, which is 3 rounds, 3 races, then 3 races, and then a final 4 races of an X number of drivers. Now, how that would work with what number of drivers would qualify, etc., that's still being sorted out. That seems the direction that NASCAR's kind of headed a little bit, but this is a fluid situation. Things can change, and as this has really kind of come to light over the last few months, this is went from, it doesn't look like there's going to be any changes for next year to now there's very likely going to be some changes, and there could even be some big changes if we go back to the season long, but I don't anticipate that.
And just to put that kind of real quickly for folks, under this year's format, you basically would, what we're saying, the 3-3-4 is you'd get to the round of 8 and then have 8 cars compete over 4 races for the championship. That's using this year's format, starting with, say, Las Vegas. The next 4 races, those 4 races would determine the champion.
Las Vegas, Phoenix, Martinsville, and I think Talladega. Those would be the 4 races this year that would determine the championship, and so that would how it would work. And I think actually for next year it would be Homestead, Phoenix, Talladega, Martinsville.
So just to kind of put that in a box so that everybody can kind of get a visual picture of what we're talking about. Pete, I mean, you and I were talking, I know, before the program today about this. I do not like the idea of going back to the 1 to 36. We saw at IndyCar this year, the champion was crowned with 3 races to go. And that's kind of why we went to this format in the first place.
Exactly why we went to this format in the first place. A couple things I'll say. First of all, does anything ever get done by committee? I've never found anything to get done by committee. Okay, so that's number 1.
Or by lawyers.
Number 2, right. Number 2, I'm with you. And I know that this is a hot button topic, right? There's a group of fans out there that want to go back to the 1 through 36, and I just don't see that happening. I think that's going backward. But I do think you can make the playoff format better. And, again, if you do the 3-3-4 and it's a bigger body of work at the end, and it's not just the one race where someone could blow a tire or something like that, and this whole season goes out the window, I'm actually good with that. But the other part of this that I would like to see, to be honest, guys, when we first started this, the whole win and you're in had a caveat. And the caveat was you got to stay within a threshold in the point standings. So you were having the pendulum a little bit between winning, which should be the most important thing, but being consistent. And when that went away, I think that got a lot of folks a little bit more wired up about this, that somebody that was 28th in the point standings could just win a race and magically be in the playoffs. So from what I've been hearing and talking to people, I think that's been addressed as well. So at the end of the day, I'm a playoff guy. I think we need the playoffs, all for changing it up a little bit, making it a little bit more interesting, maybe making it a little, I won't say fair, but just sort of maybe a little more of a balance between the two. And if we do it next year, I mean, the only other part of that I would say is now we're back to doing math, because you're going to have to do some math in those 4 races, no matter how many drivers are in it. And I can remember distinctly a lot of fans didn't like that before we went to a playoff format back in 2003, that you had to add everything up. Now it seems like we want to go back that way, but not for 36 races. I'm totally off that plan for sure.
Yeah, and I was going to bring that up because that was exactly something that they were talking about at the time, that we don't want fans having to do math, and we don't want to get down to the last race Jordan, and have a guy get out of as he gets in the car going, hey, all I got to do is finish 32nd today, and I'm good.
Yeah. There's a belief, and I think this is accurate. If you go to like the 3-3-4 and whatever number of drivers that is, 4, 6, somewhere in whatever that is, that the window is going to be so small, you're not going to be able to say, hey, I'm just going to have to finish 20th at the final race. Like, you're going to have to go race because there's not going to be enough opportunity there for someone to run away with this thing unless the rest of the guys just all have the worst Alex Bowman type, Josh Berry type playoff, right? So we'll see how it goes. I think it's going to go well. I still think there's going to be an onus on running really well. I think there's going to probably, there could potentially be some bonus points, for winning races, be rewarded for that, which is a good thing. If at the end of the day, if you can incentivize drivers and teams to win races more and reward that more, I think that's going to be a good thing. And I think ultimately, you can hit on a championship here that gives everybody a little bit of what they want. You can give fans who clamor for the season-long championship, okay, we're not going to do that, but we can give you a championship that still is, multi-race and kind of gives you that feel for it, and where it still matters being consistent, and it helps the teams that are great if they have an off week to recover. But you can also still have the excitement and the drama of the playoffs and winning and advancing, or a team getting hot at the right time and just coming through like a Tony Stewart in 2011 or Joey Logano last year that just rises up and grabs that championship by the throat because they're going to go take it. Those kind of moments I think you can still have. I feel like the direction that NASCAR's headed in is going to be a good balance for that.
I've got two names that dispute what you said about only having to finish like 32nd. Corey Haim, Connor Zilic.
Sure.
Sure. Yeah. Well, in those scenarios, you're right about that. So, it could happen, but I think to Jordan's point, this gives it a little less of an opportunity to happen because it is a little smaller body of work, And the other part I would say about this, again, this back and forth about, are the playoffs necessary? Should motorsports have playoffs? I don't know. I'm obviously a guy that also spends time in stick and ball sports, so I'm sort of plugged into a playoff system where, you know what, you might have a great regular season, but when you get to the playoffs, you don't have as good of a season, you don't win the championship. And I'm okay with that. But I do think making it a little bit of bigger sample size gets away from the one race where, again, to your point, Brett, we go to Phoenix and Connor Zilic, who might have 10 wins by then, and Corey Haim might have 10 wins by then. Something goes haywire in the championship 4 race and they don't win the championship. I sort of get that sentiment as well.
I think this sport needs a playoff. For those of us that remember before we had the playoff and, you got somebody winning the championship with 1 win and clinching it with 2 or 3 races to go. And for those of us that do, Pete, you do a show every day. I do a show every week. Jordan, you've been on these shows a lot, and you understand. Can you imagine going through August and September and October where you've got 2 guys that still have a shot at a championship and you don't have the excitement that we had in August leading into the playoffs, leading into guys battling for that last playoff spot?
I like the playoffs. I like what it does. I think there's merits to the season-long championship. I get that. I recognize that. But I also think that the playoffs bring added value. And I think at the end of the day, there's more upside to a playoff than not a playoff. And I think people tend to fall in the thing of, well, this is how it was back in the day. And, 1992, we had this classic battle. That's great. That was the exception and not the rule. And too often, these championships were pretty much decided well before the last race of the year, or it was a situation, to your point, of guys just got to go finish 15th or 20th in the final race. That's not exciting. That's not drama. And that you have to make your sport as compelling and interesting as possible. Baseball, I think, is the best example for this. And Pete knows this so well because he covers baseball. He's a longtime Cubs fan. That sport has gone through a transformation the last few years of how can we appeal to a younger demographic? How can we make the game faster? How can we make it move? How can we increase scoring? And they had to come in and basically eliminate some traditional things. And people at the time are up in arms. This is hearsay. What are we doing? Everybody now is like, this is great. Why didn't we do this sooner? I just think that you have to be very careful to clamoring to things how they used to be, because how they used to be, there was a wild set of circumstances that fit that narrative back then. They no longer fit that narrative today.
Well, and Pete, you've talked about it. And I've heard you talk about it, and I've talked about it. How many times do you hear somebody call and go, Racing was so much better back in the 80s and 90s. No. You going to tell me it was better when there were 2 cars or 3 cars in the lead lap at the end of a race? I mean, it's like, if that was the situation today, what would your show be like on Monday mornings?
Exactly. I mean, and listen, I'm kind of with Jordan. I respect the opinion of how it was back in the day, but nostalgia is a heck of a drug. I mean, I say that all the time. And a lot of times we remember how things were, and it weren't really exactly like that. So I do think you got to thread the needle. And, again, trying to find a way to appeal to newer fans who understand. I mean, whether you believe it or not, newer fans, younger fans understand the concept of a playoff. They understand the concept of elimination. I mean, I really and truly feel like there have been a lot of races in the last 4 or 5 weeks that without the playoff, I don't know if they're quite as interesting as they would have been without it. So I'm on board, and I have no issue with, tweaking a little bit, seeing where it turns out. And, the last point I would make, and I know this has been another big conversation here, but the elephant in the room is how much of a role does television play in this? I know that television in all sports tells you where the games are going to be played, what time they're going to be played. It's no different here. And I know that the NBC side of this, I would imagine certainly that we heard the other day, they said, listen, we're going to back out of this. You guys make the call. But I have no problem with them having a seat at that table. They should, because they're spending a lot of money to try to get as many eyeballs and having people watch the sport as possible.
Absolutely. All right, when we come back, we talked about Connor Zilic. Well, he'll be in Cup next year. We now know what Team Zilic is going to look like. Stay with us.
Make your plans now to stay at the South Point Hotel Casino and Spa when NASCAR returns to Las Vegas. They have great race ticket and room packages for you to choose from. The South Point also features a wide variety of excellent dining options at 11 different restaurants. Or you can enjoy the 16-screen movie complex and visit the 64-lane bowling center. Visit southpointcasino.com and make your reservations today. Stay where the racers stay at the South Point Hotel Casino and Spa.
Hey, this is Michael Walter for Echo Park Automotive, and I'm here to tell you why you should shop Echo Park before you buy a car, truck, or SUV. Over half the inventory at Echo Park is priced below $25,000. And car for car, truck for truck, Echo Park Automotive's pricing is $3,000 less than the competition. Maybe that's why Echo Park has over 100,000 five-star reviews. Echo Park Automotive is built to make sure everyone drives away happy. It's even in their name, Echo Park Automotive. Every car, happy owner. The official used car dealer of Speedway Motorsports.
Doug Rice is your host for Fast Talk every week on PRN, the Performance Racing Network.
These cars are about to fire it off in anger.
Logano back across the stripe. Now Zane Smith putting on some pressure.
Side by side, Austin Cindric has him at the line, and he will take the lead into one.
Boy, what a save. We got cars sideways. It's Christopher Bell. He spins and collects a couple cars. Here comes Shane Van Gisbergen on the bottom. He's looking for second.
Now Chris Buescher fired out of a cannon at turn 2. He's right into the rear bumper of Ty Gibbs. Which way is he going to go?
Oh, it's a multi-car accident. I want to say 15, 20 cars. Looks like Austin Cindric is involved. Denny Hamlin. Guys, that took out about 2/3 of the field.
We have a fight on pit road between 2 crew guys. One of them is with Ty Gibbs. One is with Brad Keselowski.
Brad Keselowski will see the white flag as he drives under the start-finish line.
Chase Elliott has battled at the front all night long. He's won the war. Chase Elliott has just punched his ticket to the playoff.
Awesome job, man. Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
This is PRN.
Let's get back to more Pit Reporters on the Performance Racing Network.
And welcome back, along with Pete Pistone from SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, Jordan Bianchi from The Athletic, Brett McMillan, glad to have you with us. All right, we now know who Connor Zilic's crew chief's going to be in the Cup Series next year, and it's going to be Randall Burnett's going to move over to Trackhouse Pete. He's been, of course, Kyle Busch's crew chief over at Childress, so I think highly respected, and he's going to have a lot of fun with the young man.
Well, I think he just won the NASCAR lottery, guys. I mean, my goodness, he goes over there to. I mean, I know we throw around that term generational talent a lot, and I'm as guilty as anybody. But man, how else do you describe Connor Zilic and what he's done, and what he still can do this year, and what a lot of folks think he can do next year? So I think that's a good pairing there. Obviously, though, the other side of it is what happens over there at Richard Childress Racing. We all know how miserable it's been for 2025 for Kyle Busch and Randall Burnett. I made the comment the other day, flippantly, if that 8 car were a dog on Sunday, I'd put it down. That's how bad he was at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. So I don't know what the backstory is going to be of that, but I think if you're Randall Burnett, you got to be pretty happy that you've got a guy now that you're going to work with. A lot of people feel like the ceiling is pretty high for a guy named Connor Zilic.
Of course, that also means you got a lot of pressure to succeed.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, you got a rookie driver who's going to come in. There's going to be ups and downs, but that driver has got a really good head on his shoulders, is really mature behind the wheel, isn't kind of prone to the brashness or the immaturity and the mistakes that a lot of young drivers make. And the thing with Randall is, yes, it's been a struggle the last few years at RCR with Kyle, but I think that's more of an organizational thing than a driver or crew chief specific thing. You look at Randall, had a lot of success with Tyler Reddick when Tyler Reddick first came into the series, so he knows how to work with a young driver and kind of develop him and lift him up. And as you look at his body work with Reddick, each and every year they got better and better, and then their third season they won 3 races and Reddick was a force. Kyle Busch, first year with Kyle, they had a really good start to the year, won 3 races, and they looked like they were on their way, and things haven't gone that way. But Randall is a really good crew chief. He's got a great leadership qualities in terms of how he leads a team and doesn't get too up, doesn't get too down. I think it's a really smart pairing of a young driver with a veteran crew chief who's been through this before and knows how to work with rookie drivers.
How do you see him as a fit at Trackhouse with the other guys that are there, Pete?
I think it's a good fit. I mean, I do. I think you're seeing, I think Ross Chastain and Phil Surgeon, that's a good combination over there. I think you're seeing some improvement, guys, on the oval track side with Shane Van Gisbergen. I thought he did a pretty good job. He got caught up in that mess on Sunday at New Hampshire. So I think, generally speaking, he is a good fit there. And, we've all been around younger drivers, but, Jordan talked about Connor, and his demeanor is a lot different than a lot of the other younger drivers I've been around, because he is kind of like almost an old soul a little bit. He is a very measured kind of a kid. And I think, to me, the pairing between these two are going to be really good. So I know it's been not the best year for Trackhouse Racing. They still got a guy in with Chastain, obviously, in the playoffs. And, we'll find out what happens with Daniel Suarez. But I think this is a really good move for that race team. And obviously, the sky's the limit for Connor Zilic.
Also, last week, Legacy Motor Club and Rick Ware Racing settled the suit that they had going on over a charter. So Legacy's going to they're going to buy the charter. Mm-hmm. But this isn't the end of the story, because the charter that they're buying, as I understand it, and I'll let you explain it, was the one that was being leased to RFK that Ryan Preece is driving this year. So how's this all going to play out for RFK and for Rick Ware and for Legacy Motor Club?
I guess the easiest way to say this is for 2026, really nothing is going to change. Legacy is going to run 2 full-time teams. Rick Ware is going to run 1 full-time team. RFK is going to continue to run 3 full-time teams. Rick Ware told me that their intent at Rick Ware Racing is to continue to be a charter team. So they have another charter they can pull back and run under that umbrella. The way this is going to basically unfold with the Cliff Notes version is, come 2027, RFK is essentially going to have to go find a 3rd charter, which is going to be costly to do. Legacy then is going to have 3 full-time teams. The expectation over there is that by 2027, Legacy is a 3-car full-time team, and Rick Ware continues to run under its 1 charter. So this would essentially put RFK in a spot where they have to go charter hunting.
So that tells me this does not open a ride for next year, Pete.
No, it doesn't. And Jimmy Johnson told me, specifically to Jordan's point, yes, they want to be a 3-car team, but they can't do it until they get that 3rd charter. So you're looking at 2027, and obviously people start doing the math. Well, who's going to be in that ride? Corey Heim right now seems to be the odd man out, because there's like nowhere for him to go after the Truck Series season this year. Don't know what he would do next year, but it would make sense, right? As a Toyota team, they have him go to Legacy. So they want to do it, but they're going to have to pump the brakes. So again, it's pretty much going to be almost the same landscape we had this past year for next year as these teams figure it out. We'll see what RFK does when they have to make that next move.
Any idea what Daniel Suarez's future is for next year?
I think you're going to see Daniel Suarez full-time in the Cup Series next year. Everyone I've had conversations with seems to indicate that Suarez will have a full-time ride in the Cup Series next year. Now, where exactly that's going to be, we don't know yet. I think you're going to probably find out in the next few weeks.
All right. When we come back, Kansas up next. Stay with us.
I have a friend, about 50, had a bad accident and couldn't go back to work. If you're between the ages of 49 and 63 and can't go back to your job because of a physical or mental disability, Social Security could pay you as much as $3,800 a month. If you or a family member is unable to work because of a disability, call the Social Security Disability Helpline. Our team will give you a free case review and explain to you how much money you're entitled to, and you won't pay anything unless we get you benefits. See if you or a family member is entitled to close to $45,000 a year in Social Security disability funds. Remember, this is not something for people over the age of 65. If you're under 65 and can't work, call now.
800-731-1582. 800-731-1582. That's 800-731-1582.
Catch Kyle Petty's Back Then Again Country Countdown with Charlie and Debbie here on PRN, the Performance Racing Network.
My fiance is a veteran.
I did tours in Korea, Germany, and Bosnia before I got injured.
When Yusuf got out of the military, he needed help getting his disability benefits.
Luckily, DAV came to the rescue. They fought for me the same way that I fought for my country.
Every year, DAV provides life-changing support to more than 1 million veterans.
My victory is never giving up and finding more ways to serve.
He's pretty amazing.
Support more victories for veterans. Go to DAV.org.
Hi, this is Doug Rice at PRN. Join me for another great episode of Fast Talk. We have NASCAR Hall of Famer Kurt Busch. What does a much older, wiser Kurt Busch want to tell Carson Hocevar?
Well, let's bust out all the VHS tapes, and you can watch all my mistakes. Try not to do those, Carson. I like what he's doing. He's learning, and he's putting his time in up front.
That's Fast Talk right here on PRN.
We're back with more of the Pit Reporters on the Performance Racing Network.
And welcome back, along with Jordan Bianchi from The Athletic and Pete Pistone from SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. I'm Brett McMillan. Glad to have you with us. All right, Kansas this week for the Cup Series. It is race number 2 of this round. And for the Xfinity Series, race number 2 of this round. So no cutoff races here. So it's going to be interesting. You got... the ones I think about, Jordan, the team that used to be so good is 2311. And they could really, really use a good run this weekend when you look at the fact that both Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace are on the wrong side of the cut line. Reddick's 23 below the cut line. Bubba's 27 below the cut line. And yet, for the last year, they have not been as good at Kansas as they had been.
Not even just last year. You go back the last 3 years for 2311. Ever since Tyler Reddick won there a few years ago, they haven't done well at all. I think their best finish collectively is 17th. It just has not been a great track for them. They've lost their mojo there, and it's a really bad time to lose your mojo coming off a race at New Hampshire where you're in the points hole that you are. You go and run 17th at best at Kansas this weekend, you're in a must-win position at the Roval. They're going to have to find that speed that they once had. Now, they could do it, certainly. This team has been really historically good on intermediate tracks. We saw Tyler Reddick win at Homestead last year. We've seen speed out of them at other places this year. They're going to have to find it, though, and they cannot have an off weekend because they picked a bad time to have a bad race.
Yeah, I mean, that's the team that you look at and think about still, but I didn't realize it had been 3 years since it's been that long since they were that good in Kansas. In the meantime, Hendrick's been really good there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, Jordan spot on. That narrative of 2311 in Kansas, I'm not leaning on that at all. I mean, they have been just miserable. Let's be honest about this. I think this is a weekend where you're going to see Kyle Larson because he's been good there in the last few years. You're going to see Denny Hamlin because he's been good there in the last few years. Logano will be in the mix. And let's not forget, we talk about these spoilers, which is one of the reasons why I kind of like the playoff system. You can make a name for yourself, even if you're not in the playoffs, like we just saw Josh Berry do. Chris Buescher, don't forget about him on Sunday at Kansas Speedway as well. So I love Kansas Speedway. It's one of my favorite tracks on the schedule. I'm going to be here this weekend covering things for SiriusXM. Love going down there. And this playoff race for the last few years, guys, has always had something a little screwy that's going on. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun on Sunday afternoon, a lot of different scenarios to play out.
Well, when you think about this race and running to Kansas, I mean, it's going to be an interesting challenge because when you talk about the Chiefs are home, so they're really battling something to get some attention. So they could use some fireworks over there.
They could use some fireworks. Chiefs have a 4:15 game as well, Eastern time, and they're playing a nationally televised game against the Baltimore Ravens. So the NASCAR, they're going to be up against that market, unfortunately. But to Pete's point, Kansas is a fantastic track, and it's interesting how it's evolved into one of the top 3, 4, 5 racetracks on the schedule year in and year out. I think this is a really big weekend for Hendrick. I kind of laid it out earlier, but I'll just reiterate quick. They haven't had a lot of speed so far, at least compared to JGR and Penske. This is a great track for them. This is an opportunity to send a reminder of, hey, we're still here to play. What do we need to see out of them this weekend that we haven't seen so far? And what we need to see is speed, performance, execution, and honestly a win.
Well, it's hard to believe, and as much as we talk about how intermediate tracks, the 1.5 miles, have been the bread and butter of this series, Pete, this is the first 1.5 miles since the 600. That's hard to believe.
It really is. It's really hard to believe, but I mean, I'll take it because you're right. I mean, this race car has shown these are the best tracks in terms of the competition and the kind of racing we get, and we have all the things on the line as we just talked about. That's why I like Kansas being, where it is there. So we'll see. Ross Chastain's another guy that, as I looked at my notes, he's also been pretty good there as well.
Defending
so
race
I think
winner.
We're gonna get a good race, yeah. And I think the bottom line is where it is and kind of everything that's on the line. Obviously, you want to make things happen here because, as I mentioned, with the Roval looming, a lot of guys are not great road course racers, and I got a feeling Shane Van Gisbergen is going to be the guy they're going to be chasing that Sunday anyway. You really want to make something happen Sunday afternoon at Kansas Speedway.
To Pete's point, Jordan, how big does that make this race for some of these guys?
Huge. I mean, this is why Blaney winning at New Hampshire is so big. Penske hasn't had great speed on road courses for a while now. And so if you're Logano and you need points and you're going into the Roval, that's a tough situation. Go back a year ago. He got eliminated on points at the Roval. It took a DQ from Alex Bowman to get Logano into that next round. So to sit there and say, we're going to be okay, we can go run 10th at the Roval, you can't do that. It's an unpredictable race, a lot of topsy-turviness, a lot of pit strategy, a lot of aggressiveness. That is a dangerous place to be on the bubble. And so if you can get yourself in a spot where you're effectively locked in, if not locked in outright, it is a weight off your shoulders.
So as we look at Kansas, and we know they got a new right side tire this week. So again, I think what you're going to hear throughout, as you've heard it throughout this week, Pete, is a lot of I don't know.
Yes. Lots of crew chiefs don't know until they get there. When you only have the 25 minutes of practice, there's not a lot you can learn when you're out there. So again, it's a little bit of learning on the fly. So the best you can do, kind of go back to what we talked about with Chase Elliott, boy, just hope that you got it right in your sim or anything else that you could do. So when you get there, you're not behind the 8 ball. And I know it's kind of a broken record. Qualifying will be key. It'll still be a track position race. They all are. And where you are on pit road is obviously very important. So I think that Saturday, learning what this tire is as best you can in that practice session, and going out there and getting a good enough lap to be at least in the top 10, if you're a playoff driver, to me, that's imperative, I think, to have a good day there on brings at Kansas Speedway.
Pete brings up a great point, Jordan, because I'm starting to hear so much from these crew chiefs when you talk to them that sometimes they get to the track and they go, we just missed it in our setup. What we thought it was going to do based on the sim work we did, or the work the guys did with the looking at the computers and setting everything up, we missed it. We thought this is what the setup was going to be, and we were just way off. I'm starting to hear that more and more, and if they're anticipating this new tire is going to do this and they're wrong, NASCAR's put them in so much of a box these days, they don't have a lot of adjustments to make.
And you don't have time to make adjustments because you only have 25 minutes, and so you can't really come in and do a complete overhaul of your setup and then go back out there and get any laps. And this is the unfortunate box that teams are in now with this new format. I can't even call it new because this is how it's been. This is a tough weekend. Last weekend was tough. Bristol was tough. This is part of it. I mean, the simulation world that we live in, and it's so good and often so accurate, but there are so many variables. And when you have a new tire compound and you don't know how the car is going to respond to that, and you have to factor in weather, and whether it's going to be hot and sunny or it's going to be cold and cool, and the track conditions and all of that stuff, you don't know how it's going to set up. So it can be really challenging, and it's why those laps in practice are so imperative. And it's, again, I hate to harp on this, but I would love to see a little bit longer of a practice window, just so teams aren't throwing a complete curveball where if something is wrong or the weather changes or something like that, they're completely out of lunch. They can actually adjust on the fly.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a different world, and hey, you got to adapt however you can. When we come back, time for our white flag laps. Stay with us.
This is Kyle Petty for Echo Park Automotive, and I'm here to tell you why you should shop Echo Park before you buy a car, truck, or SUV. Over half of inventory at Echo Park is priced below $25,000, and car for car, truck for truck, Echo Park Automotive's pricing is $3,000 less than the competition. Maybe that's why Echo Park has over 95,000 five-star reviews. Echo Park Automotive is built to make sure you drive away happy. It's even in their name, Echo Park Automotive. Every car, happy owner. The official used car dealer of Speedway Motorsports.
We work hard to keep our cars looking great on the outside, but engine components need our attention too. That's where you can trust Z-Max Micro Lubricant to disperse carbon buildup in your engine and fuel system, to keep your car or truck running at its peak. By soaking into the metal of your engine, Z-Max Micro Lubricant improves performance, extends engine life, and reduces emissions. Trust the many customers who've said, "Thanks for saving my engine." Find out more at zmax.com or follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
Lenny Baticki brings you PRN at the Track every week here on PRN, the Performance Racing Network.
It's hard to believe in this day and age in the United States of America that children are hungry.
Our time on this planet is short. We have to give back to those in need.
Every child has a chance, no matter what obstacles they may encounter.
Never have we been taxed more as a society to help kids the way we are right now.
At Speedway Children's Charities,
our mission is simple. Help every child we can.
Because all children
deserve joy
and hope
and love.
I'm PRN's Doug Turnbull, co-host of the 5 to Go podcast, a weekly deep dive into 5 motorsports issues. Devin Kupka gives the Gen Z view.
One thing that I've never seen before, when the cars got 4 wide, everybody stood up cheering.
And championship-winning mechanic Dan Elliott leans on his decades in the garage and promoting.
Unless everybody is aware of the rules, then no, it's not fair for everyone.
Listen to the 5 to Go podcast on GoPRN.com and subscribe on Apple and Spotify.
Brett McMillan returns with more of the Pit Reporters here on the Performance Racing Network.
And welcome back. Time now for our white flag laps. And first up from SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, it's Pete Pistone.
There's been a lot of talk these days about what's more important, people watching on television and the audience there, or people in the grandstands, and how do you sort of thread the needle between the two? I know television ratings are going to be a big topic because obviously they pay a lot of money and you want to see as many people watching these races as possible. But I don't think we should lose sight of how many sellouts we've had here in 2025 for NASCAR. The Daytona 500, the Coke 600, Iowa, Gateway, Richmond, this past week in New Hampshire, camping sellouts at places like Michigan and Watkins Glen. So I just want to say the race fans have come out this year, and that's great. And I hope they continue to come out the rest of the way. Hope the television ratings are high as well for the playoffs. But let's not forget the folks that spend their hard-earned money, time, and energy to come to the racetrack. They've been coming out a lot this year, and I think NASCAR should tip their cap to those fans.
Amen. Well said. Next up from The Athletic, Jordan Bianchi.
The first round of the playoffs belonged to Joe Gibbs Racing, but what New Hampshire did was serve a reminder that this is still Ryan Blaney's world, and we're all living in it right now when it comes to the playoffs. And yes, it's only one race, but what this race win did is it allows him and his team to look ahead to that next round. Doesn't matter what happens here this week at Kansas or what happens at the Roval. This team is now focused on Las Vegas, where a track they're really good at and they've got a lot of speed. If they can carry that speed over to Las Vegas and have success, they put themselves in a good position points-wise to maybe not have to fret at Talladega, another race that's good for them. And oh, by the way, after Talladega, it's Martinsville, which just happens to be Ryan Blaney's best track. And then after that is Phoenix. My point in all this is, if you're looking for a championship favorite, I think we found it, and it's Ryan Blaney in that 12 team.
Yeah, keep an eye on that yellow car.
There you go.
There you go. Pete talked about sellouts and how important they are for the fans in the stands. And believe me, TV, it's important for them too, because they want to see people in the seats. because that gives people incentive to watch because it looks important on TV, and that helps the television audience and helps raise those numbers. And that's a reason that I think the playoff needs to continue in NASCAR, because you see that excitement. You saw it at Daytona for the cutoff race. You see it at New Hampshire for a playoff race. And if this is a 1-36 schedule, I don't think you see that kind of excitement this time of year. That's why the playoff needs to continue. Do we tweak the finish where it's not a one-race finish, where it's a four-race finish? That's fine. But you got to keep the playoff because that keeps the excitement going at this time of year. Pete, Jordan, thanks a lot for being with us. We'll talk to you next week on The Pit Reporters.
Join us again next week for The Pit Reporters on PRN, the Performance Racing Network.